So hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another Assetto Corsa Competizione video. Here we're going to be looking at Silverstone. We're going to be putting the McLaren 720S through its paces. And I'm also going to be sharing, like the whole premise of this video is going to be around the difference between running what I would consider to be a safe setup and what I would consider to be an alien setup. And these are going to be the main differences when you're looking at finding those extra tenths, when you're looking at competing with proper alien level drivers. And if you are an alien level driver, these are the things that you're going to be wanting to look at to find those extra tenths. So we're going to be jumping in at Silverstone. This is going to be a Silverstone setup, and I'll share with you two setups that we're going to be running today. We've got the ambient temperature set at 18 degrees. It's going to give us a track temperature there at 25 degrees. If we go into the setup, I'm just going to load this in. Just quickly look over the setup. We're going to be running traction control 1 and traction control 4. Just change that to 2. We'll run tyre set 1 so we can keep it nice and simple. 20 litres of fuel. And as you can see, we've got a slightly more forward bias brake balance, quite a bigger steering ratio. We've got some suspension being added. We've got quite a bit of preload on the differential to give us a bit more stability on corner entry. We've got front and rear anti-roll bars being used. We've got slightly different damper settings to the Meta setup, and we've got a whole load of rear wing. We've got some front wing, and we've got a little bit of a lift on the ride height. So the first laps of the day, so bear with me while I get my eye in, and we're just going to turn a few laps. I'm just going to make a subtle adjustment here because I've been driving a slightly different car that's got a lot less it's got a lot less weight through the wheel. So I just ended up adding a little bit more gain to add some more weight to the wheel. And we're just going to change that to traction control 4 so that I can flip between them on my wheel between Y and X. Really easy to do using the wheel I'm using, the McLaren GT3 rim, perfect for the car that we're in. So let's just head out, turn a few laps, see where this gets us. Just making a subtle adjustment on my steering wheel while I'm still moving because I'm using the Fanatec wheel. Very lively still, very early on, tyre pressure not to maximum. Just double check we're actually recording there. I made the error yesterday of recording this whole video without a microphone on, so we're doing it again. So just down to second gear through here. Really an area where you struggle to get the power down, and I'm going to show you as we go through there on the next lap. I'm going to choose 5 on the traction control. Cutting so much of that grass. Again, staying in second gear through here. And then down to first gear. Drop into TC1. Back to TC4. Braking just before the board. A little bit of a wide run, you can get a good acceleration on the exit. Back to TC1. We're going to stay in TC1. Terrible entry to the corner there. just didn't seem to want to turn in at all. Back to TC4. TC1. Still building some temperature in the tyres. TC4. TC1. Back to TC4, and then I'm going to swap to TC5. Back to TC1. Just allowed me to get the power down a little bit earlier. TC4. TC1. Back to TC4. Could have stayed in second gear. I'll try and go for one more lap because there was a terrible turn in turn 1. TC4. Bit out of shape. You can see that on the exit. TC5. Lots of grass cut there. Try one more lap. Still not happy with this turn 1. That's better. Much better sector 1. So as you can see, a much better lap, sticking with it. 3 laps, probably about the same, probably about the right sort of temperature or time really to get the tyres into a good window, doing 3 laps. So just give it a little bit of time, see how it feels. So that's what I would consider to be a pretty safe setup here at Silverstone in the McLaren. So now we're going to look at something that's a little bit more alien, a little bit more skill possibly needed at the wheel to get the most from the setup itself. So let's come into back to the garage, come into the setup. And the subtle differences that we've got through the setup then. Obviously we're going to be running traction control 1 and traction control 4 again, 2 on the ABS. Obviously we've run tyre set 1 already. I've put 20 litres of fuel in, so it's just the same. But we've got a lot more anti-roll bar at the front this time. We've got the brakes a lot lower, to more rearward bias. We've got a much tighter steering rack. We've got much softer suspension, subtle changes through the bump stops. We've slightly lowered the preload, so we've got a little bit more rotation through the slower speed corners. A little less stability on the corner entry. Slightly dropped the front bump and rebound, so it's a little bit softer. Stiffened the rebound, both front and rear. We've dropped a lot of this rear wing. We were running 12 on the rear wing before, now we're running 8. We've lowered the rear ride height to try and add a little bit more stability because we've lost so much rear downforce, and we've taken away all the front downforce altogether. We've dropped one of the brake ducts just to keep them running a little bit hotter at the rear as well. So let's see what we can get out of this one. Going to feel a lot more twitchy through the wheel because we've lowered the steering ratio. We're going to have a lot less downforce to contend with or to help us through the corners. So we're going to rely a lot more heavily on skill at the wheel to get the best from this setup. We've got to try and stop the car from sliding. Obviously we can do a bit of that with the traction control. A lot of the top guys tend to run TC1 most of the time. I just don't find them able to do that. So the car, even under braking, is wanting to turn because we've got that rear bias. Obviously we've got a tighter steering rack as well. We're still going to want to use traction 1 and 4. It's going to give us a lot more straight line speed. It's almost like the Spider-Man analogy. With great power comes great responsibility. And that's what you're doing when you start lowering the traction control. So give yourself some time to adjust. It's going to feel very different, the setup. Long way off the apex there. Back to TC1. So we're already very similar on the Delta, even ruined turn 1. just speaks for itself, nearly half a second on lap 1. So I've not gained loads through section 1, but like I say, we're just getting used to the setup. Obviously very similar. Could have been very similar lap times. Almost identical. Much better turn 1. TC4. A little bit squirmy on the exit there. Lost a lot of time through that corner. Trying to gain it back and gone wide. So a lot of time lost there. You can see where we're heading for a 1:57.6. You can see where we were heading. But let's just return to the garage, and I just want to give you a few things possibly that you want to look at when you're looking at when you're struggling to find those extra tenths and you're looking at lap times that other people are setting. This is really the page that you're wanting to be looking at. You can see if we make subtle adjustments on this page, very similar to what we'd had previously. Let's go up to there. And you can see that, let's just put them back. Just watching the front aero variation as we make these subtle changes. So we had 10.8. It was a good balance in how the car feels. If we add a little bit more to the front, add more to the rear, and then we start lifting this rear, we can start getting near to that 10 again, but we've got all that downforce. So we're trying to get rid of that downforce, give yourself more straight line slipperiness, but still keep a very similar figure. If we just load in the previous setup, we've got 10.0 on this setup. And we look at the other one with less downforce, we've got 10.9, 10.8. So just making those subtle changes. If you feel like the rear end's stepping away a little bit too much, you might want to just add a little bit more rear downforce. You might want to lower the rear of the car, get yourself a bit closer to that stable setup that was at 10. By lifting the rear of the car, we're just giving yourself more maneuverability. The car's going to be snappier. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy these two very different setups. I would call these the safe and aggressive, the better presets. But just things to think about when you're trying to find those extra tenths. It's always going to come when you start lowering the amount of grip that you've got, and it all comes down to the skill behind the wheel. Then it's going to come down to the driver rather than relying on aerodynamic or mechanical grip. The skill starts to come more from within the driving seat. But yeah, use those different traction controls. Not everybody is capable of running on traction control 1. Traction control 1 or 0 traction control is always going to be better. It's always going to stop the engine, limiting the amount of power that's going to the wheels. But again, that comes down to the driver's skill and whether you can get that power translated onto the circuit as grip. If you're struggling to get the power down, or you're slow getting the power down because you're scared of applying so much throttle, just move away from using 0 or 1 traction control. Like myself, I generally stick around a traction control level where it allows me to get the power down with the least amount of impact from the engine's traction control limiting acceleration. But if you just allow yourself to flip between the two, it's very hard to use 0 and another one. It kind of stops you doing that. You'll sometimes find if you swap to 0 traction control, it just really does limit the acceleration from the engine. You can only really stay in 0 traction control all the time, unless you're very much up into 4th gearing, like at Spa. If you're going through a Rouge, I tend to switch to 0 traction control, but the car is already in motion, it's not starting from a lower speed. But yeah, hopefully that's useful to you guys. Hopefully going to be looking forward to coming to Assetto Corsa Competizione with some Nordschleife footage in the next coming week from the PC version of the game. But in the meantime, I think I'm going to be having a little look on Assetto Corsa. I've not actually tried Assetto Corsa since getting the Series X, so I'm interested to see how it feels, if it actually looks any different, and just run a few laps there to get my eye back into the circuit. And yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, ciao for now.